Hello and welcome to Camp Xbox. Extreme sports and video games were a thing well before the Tony Hawk series emerged, but there was something about the release of the first Tony Hawk game that set the world on fire. The fast arcade action matched perfectly with skating, and it was fun to pick up and play. Other extreme sports came out of the woodwork, and BMX was one of those sports. Dave Mirra was one of BMX's best and most notable names, so it worked out that Mirra would get his own series. Today we are looking at his first game on the Xbox with Dave Mirra Freestyle BMX 2. Today I will give you the game's history, lasting impact, and tell you how I felt about it. All footage was captured from original Xbox hardware, and I want to thank my YouTube channel members for their support. And let's go ahead and jump into this game's history. Z-Axis developed Dave Mirra Freestyle BMX 2, and Z-Axis made games starting in 1996, but mostly worked on sports titles like Madden 96. It wasn't until 1999 that they would develop an extreme sports game with Thrasher Presents Skate and Destroy, which was published by Rockstar, and it had a more realistic control scheme than the Tony Hawk series, and did very well with critics. From there on, their next 6 games would be extreme sports games, all releasing between 2000 to 2002. One was Dave Mirra Freestyle BMX, which released on PlayStation, Dreamcast, PC, and Game Boy Color. The developer Acclaim touted that the game had made 1.2 million sales worldwide. The game came out to solid reviews and was enough of a hit to warrant a sequel. Its sequel quickly went underway and was announced in April 2001 for the next generation of consoles. Acclaim would hype up the new entry at E3 to places like IGN. The publisher said that the environments would be 4 times larger, and that this entry would raise the bar for extreme sports games. In 2001, Tony Hawk fever was still going strong, so I'm sure the hype was there to get another extreme sports hit for BMX. Dave Mirra Freestyle BMX 2 would come to PS2 first in September 2001, and then the GameCube in November 2001, and the game would be released on the Xbox on November 29th, 2001 in North America, just 2 weeks after the console's launch. It would be a European launch title, released on March 14th, 2002. I have never touched this game before, but I've always been interested in it. What better time than now to give this game a shot? I played through it recently, and let me break down how I felt about the many elements of this game, starting with the gameplay. For some, it's easy to categorize extreme sports games of this era as a Tony Hawk ripoff. Some games rightfully have that distinction. Dave Mirra, on the other hand, does enough differently to make it stand out against its competition. It does have many elements inspired by Tony Hawk, but the structure and layout of the levels differ quite a bit. The game's main mode is the Pro Quest mode. In Pro Quest, you pick from any of the BMX athletes, or the Slim Jim guy, and progress through each of the game's many levels. Each level gives you a 3-minute timer to complete the different goals and unlimited chances to complete them. Other than some control similarities, the comparisons with Tony Hawk ends there because this game takes a different approach to level design and goals. Multiple tiers of difficulty separate the goals. When you start a level, you'll simply be asked to beat a high score. Then you unlock the next set of highly specific goals. These usually ask you to grind on specific items, go to certain areas and perform tricks, or reach a total height for a jump. It sometimes asks you to hit scores, but it doesn't do it often. Dave Mirra takes a more exploratory approach to goal completion, asking you to look around. It'll give you a certain building or street, and if you're unfamiliar with the map, you must look around and find it. You will not know you are in the area until it's highlighted in green, or the goal pops up in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. I think it's a fun idea, but it's not executed well in the game. Many of these levels are gigantic, which is to this game's detriment in my opinion. The scope is impressive, and I think levels like the camp have a large scale with light pop-in that looks good for 2001. Yet, when you get to the gameplay here, it makes looking for the goal and the lack of things to do in most of the areas tedious. Like when you're asked to go to a specific building in the camp area to do a simple trick. It's stuck in a large mess of samey looking warehouses and you have to hunt for it. It becomes a hunt to find the correct one, and once you're there, the goal just isn't that entertaining and is usually extremely simple. There's a lot of grinding a specific rail, or just doing a specific hip transfer. It's not all that exciting, and I would have preferred goal design to be more involved, asking you to hit certain combos or get a large amount of points in a specific area. Those are there, but very lightly when compared to most of the other goals. It leads to some of the gameplay not being interesting because it's just a run to get to a specific spot to do something really easy. The actual gameplay is mostly solid though, and I would love a game with this good of design to have a little bit better of level design. I wanted to explore the combo and trick system more because it is quite interesting. Everything is based on directional input, meaning when you hit a button, all 8 directions on the analog stick are registered to different tricks. With X and B, you go through the normal fare of BMX tricks such as no hands or doing a Superman. It feels intuitive and solid, and you hit the Y button to do grinds as normal in games of this type. But I think the A button in manuals gives this game a uniqueness that I like. The A button can be used to wall plant or ride the wall in various ways. This is a great way to thread combos together, so if you're tricking and a wall is coming, you can hit against it to keep a combo up. And it's the same with manuals that allow you to traverse areas where not much is happening and still get points. It's intuitive, and I think the trick and combo system are well designed and make this game comfortable. Getting into a groove can be fun, but the level design and some movement issues make this a lesser experience. For one, the turning is very wide in this game, and most of the time it's fine, but in tighter spaces, this becomes annoying. It's also surprisingly hard to stop in this game. I felt like sometimes my input to stop my bike wouldn't do anything half the time, and I even tried on multiple controllers. It's not a momentum thing, even though that is an element of this game that I do like. The physics are spot on, and it's all about building momentum and speed. Going up ramps over and over will give you more and more height. It's satisfying and gives this game a realistic feeling. I also love the ragdoll effects in this game for any time you fall off the bike. It's like you're knocked completely unconscious and you go completely limp. It's really fun to see. The gameplay here does have some merit, but the design of it just doesn't keep it entertaining. I would much prefer a smaller world with more to do than something large and empty. Some games have large design and stuff to do everywhere, but this game just doesn't have that. The scope is huge, but is it actually fun to be in? I could see at least the multiplayer being fun. In the multiplayer, you have multiple modes to play in, and they're all simple challenges like who can jump the highest or who can do the longest combos. It's simplistic and fast, and I could see myself getting into heated competitions with my friends here. It's quite simple though, and it goes by extremely fast, so it won't last for that long. There's also the side mode for the level designer, which functions exactly how you'd expect, just like in the Tony Hawk games. You place objects to ride on, and you can create some fun monstrosities, but it's really not enough to keep you around. The Pro Quest mode is the bulk of your gameplay, and at times it's fun, but at other times it meanders. It does feel like a mixed bag. The music in Dave Mirra is great. It doesn't have a lot of songs, but it has a solid selection to bolster it. I love that it feels like an eclectic mix of tunes. You have classic rock from Black Sabbath, ska punk from Sublime, and classic hip hop from A Tribe Called Quest. All great artists with a great song selection from each, and it makes riding and tricking around a blast. It captures the fading 90s perfectly, and if you grew up in this era, you feel right at home listening to these tracks. If you don't like any of that, don't worry though, because this game supports custom soundtracks. It allows you to use any album or songs that you have burnt to your Xbox hard drive. So if you don't want any of that and want to blast some metal or jazz, you can do that. It's a feature that makes any game on the Xbox just a little bit better. The audio elsewhere in this game is limited, but fine, with no notable negatives. I think it wants you to play with music on, and unfortunately all footage I'm showing today lacks the copyrighted music. Normally in the background you're going to hear bike chains moving, grunts when you fall off the bike, and the tires moving on the terrain. It's all immersive and never annoying. I think one of the best things a game can do with sound effects is have you not notice them. The lack of them is going to be noticeable, and annoying noises would do the same, but it should feel inherently present when you're in the game's world, and I think that's something this game pulls off. The game's look is solid for an Xbox game right around the console's launch. The definition of everything is crisp, and it does support 480p output. There is some light pop-in issues, but the view distances in the large levels are generally good. My problem with the visuals is generally in the way the levels look. Some of the levels are quite good, like the water park level, which has you going through huge water slides and pool interiors. This one is tighter, but has so much variety to it. And the same could be said with the highway level, which has a ton of variety and is a much smaller experience with more height variety. And this allows for some insane tricks, but it's not a giant pit of nothingness and always does something cool. Both of these levels look solid too, and there's always something going on. On the flip side, you have levels like the swamp, which is just an ugly mess of green. Besides a boathouse, it feels like a mess of trails and hills. It's empty, and not much is going on with it, making for something that felt visually unappealing to me, and it wasn't very entertaining. And it's the same with the train yard, which has a lot of ugly grays and not much to do that's interesting. The look and level design needed to be crafted out more to create something with variety, or something more interesting to look at. Some levels just don't have elements that pop out, which makes a good chunk of the levels in the game bland and forgettable. Usually the fantastical ones like the water park stand out here, and the realistic ones seem a little dull. The actual quality of the graphics is fine, I just wish the design of them looked better or had more done for them. On one hand though, the Xbox and GameCube have exclusive levels, which are Greenville and Venice, and these are some of the better levels in this game. Venice is already a really cool place to do a game like this in, with interesting architecture to pull out of it, and I thought that level was great. And then there's places like Greenville which seem like they'd be uninteresting, but they pull a lot of life out of it, and there's tons of color in that level. This game does have times where visually it does shine, but I just wish it was more consistent across the board. Dave Mirra Freestyle BMX 2 has a good basis for a sports game. The controls sometimes have issues, but the trick system is a blast. I think threading combos here feels great. It's the actual level design that I think makes this game not stand out. The goal structure just wasn't that entertaining. It was too simple or too exploratory. Some levels are also way too large and not full of anything interesting. Some levels do shine, but a solid amount of them feel uninspired. Luckily, the definition is great for 2001, and the music is excellent. It's also a game that you can get comfortable with and have a good time with, but it had too many issues that I couldn't overlook. I'd say it was a very mixed game for me. I didn't hate it, but I'm not too interested in ever going back to it. On my ranking list, Dave Mirra enters in at 76 out of the 86 original Xbox games I've played on the channel. I think its replay value is stronger than Arctic Thunder's, but State of Emergency is a far more interesting game. Dave Mirra Freestyle BMX 2 received good reviews in 2001. The Xbox version has a 76 on Metacritic, which is considered generally favorable. Some outlets like IGN were mixed with a 6.9, noting that the controls were messy. GameSpot felt a bit higher with a 7.4, but kind of had the same sentiment. Many other outlets were much higher with praise, and they loved the size of the courses available. In their second issue, Official Xbox Magazine loved this game, and gave it an 8.7 out of 10. They loved the huge levels and the trick system. Their only downside was that the graphics weren't great. The game was well received and even garnered an Xbox Platinum Hits Edition. This led to a couple more entries in the series, including BMXXX, which we will eventually get to on this channel. Z-Axis developed that one, and Aggressive Inline, which is a game that I'm excited to get to eventually. And later in 2002, Activision would swoop in and acquire Z-Axis because they liked what they were doing. Yet you wouldn't know that because their next game was in 2006, which was the tie-in video game to the third X-Men movie, and then they wouldn't get another one until 2009 with the Guitar Hero spin-off, Guitar Hero Van Halen. And then right after that, they would be shut down in 2010. And I may not have loved this game, but I know this team had promise and made some pretty good stuff after this, and I really hate to see what happened to them. Luckily, this game is still loved today, and I see tons of people nostalgic for it on YouTube and on Reddit. Looking at the user aggregate website Backlogged, it holds a 3.1 out of 5 with 240 plays. A lot of reviews have nostalgia for this game and great memories with it. Yet some don't love the controls of the game and call it janky. You still see some negativity, but it was mostly positive. This game still lives on for some, which makes me happy. I may not have loved it, but it's always important to know that this is my own take on this experience, and to some, this one is a classic, and more power to you. As a final note, Dave Mirra would tragically take his own life in 2016. It was a sad loss for many in the BMX and the rally world. I wanted to bring it up because this game lists different facts about the athletes. In Dave Mirra's, it lists his final words. This was more meant to be silly at the time, but now it's tragic. And here Dave Mirra puts as his final words, "Stay strong." But that does wrap it up for today. If you loved this game, if you hated it back in the day, let me know in the comments. I would love to hear your opinion. Everybody's opinion is important. Also, subscribe to keep up with the retro Xbox content, as it really helps out my channel. And also, I want to give a huge shout out to my YouTube channel members, campers, and camp counselors. Thank you so much for your support. You help out the channel so much. And I'll see you here next time at Camp Xbox.